Most people think an Alaska cruise is, well, an Alaska cruise. You pick a ship, pick a date, and you're good to go. But when it comes down to it, most people end up choosing between three popular options, and the choice you make quietly shapes your entire Alaska experience. It affects what you see, how much time you spend in the ports, and what this cruise actually ends up costing you. And so the real question is, which one actually gives you the Alaska experience you're looking for? When you compare Alaska cruises, you'll typically see them based out of either Seattle, Vancouver, or one-way itineraries that start in one place and end in another. And at first they can look similar because many visit the same places, so it's not obvious why this choice even matters. But what's not obvious is how much this decision changes everything around the cruise, from how much the trip costs to how much time you actually spend in Alaska and what you actually experience during your journey. So in this video, I'm breaking down how each option changes the experience and how to choose the route that fits what you want this trip to be. Oh, and if we haven't met yet, I'm Evan from Family at Sea. If this is your first time watching my channel, I'm glad you're here. And if you've been here a while, you already know how much I appreciate you. If you're ready, I am. Let's go. When you're comparing Seattle, Vancouver, and one-way Alaska cruises, before you even begin to look at the ports, you need to consider what factors into the experience before you even step foot on the ship. Seattle is usually the easiest starting point for Americans because you're flying domestic, so there's a lot of flight options and the airport-to-port logistics are pretty simple. Hotels can still be expensive in cruise season, but compared with Vancouver, Seattle is usually easier to price out without getting sticker shock. While a passport is still the smart move for any cruise, some closed-loop Seattle sailings may allow U.S. citizens to travel with other approved documents because the cruise starts and ends at the same U.S. port, which can save you money and hassle if you don't have yours. A word of caution, though, to check your exact sailing because every itinerary in cruise line policy matters. Now, Vancouver is different because now you're entering from Canada before the cruise even starts. And that means you're going to need a valid passport for international flights or a border crossing, and then you start factoring customs and flights and hotel prices, and it can all get pretty painful fast during Alaska cruise season. The upside is the Vancouver's cruise port is very convenient once you're there, but getting there can cost more time and more money than people expect. And then one-way itineraries add the most moving parts. You usually pair Vancouver with Seward or Whittier, which means flying into or out of Anchorage and then having to figure out how to get from Anchorage to your actual cruise port, as there's no regular airline service to Seward or Whittier, so most people are using a train, bus, or private transfer, and that can take a few hours and add several $100s onto the cost of your trip. So when you compare prices, don't just compare cruise fares. Compare flights, hotels, transfers, passports, travel days, and how much effort it takes before vacation actually starts. And that's why having the right person in your corner can make such a big difference. Because once you're dealing with different starting cities, one-way flights, transfers, various itineraries with different ports, and all the moving pieces around your dream Alaska cruise, well, it's really easy to think you're getting a great deal and miss what's actually driving the experience. That's exactly why we Book Through Cruises it. Instead of trying to piece all of this together on your own, you're working with people who understand how these itineraries actually play out. Not just the cruise, but everything around it. They know which routes are worth the extra cost, which ones aren't, and how different cabins and sailings can completely change the experience. They've saved us thousands over the years, helped us land better cabins, and kept us from making choices we would have regretted later. Which is more than I can say for Frank, who once told me, "Evan, I booked the cheapest one I could find. I figured Alaska is Alaska." Frank, you also went all in at the all-you-can-eat buffet the day before Glacier Bay on your last Alaska cruise. And well, the only glacier you saw that day came from the porcelain bowl in your bathroom. With their low price guarantee and people who actually care, Cruises It makes booking simpler, cheaper, and a whole lot less stressful. So click the link in the description below or call the number on the screen and tell them Evan from Family at Sea sent you. You'll be glad you did. So when you look at these three options, they might seem similar on a map, but they create very different experiences once you're on the ship. A Seattle round trip is usually built around convenience, and that shows up pretty quickly once you look at how the itinerary is put together. Because the cruise starts and ends in the US, there's a law that requires foreign flagged ships to stop in another country during the sailing, which is why you'll always see them stopping in Canada, typically in Victoria. But that stop is over in less than 4 hours, and it doesn't even start until 8 p.m., which means if you actually get off the ship, you may not be getting back on until nearly midnight, and well, you got to be off early the next morning because the cruise is over after that. And another thing to consider is that Seattle starts further south, which means the ships have to cover more ground before they get into the heart of southern Alaska. So between this and the wasted port call in Victoria, you'll typically have less time in the ports you actually want to visit. Now Vancouver changes that. Since you're already starting in Canada, the ship doesn't need that short stop in Victoria just to meet regulations, and you're starting closer to Alaska, which allows more of the sailing time to be focused on Alaska itself. These itineraries are also more likely to follow the inside passage more closely, which means calmer water, more scenery throughout the day, and a stronger sense that you are already in Alaska before you even reach your first port. One-way itineraries feel different for a different reason. Instead of sailing up and then turning around, you're moving through Alaska from one place to another. That allows for more variation in what you see, and in many cases, stronger glacier days or additional scenic cruising areas that round-trip itineraries aren't able to include. So while all three may visit similar ports, the route itself changes how much of your time feels like you're truly in Alaska versus just getting there and back. Now, what really changes between these options isn't just the route, it's what's actually included in the route. Seattle and Vancouver round trips usually pull from the same core set of ports. You'll almost always see places like Juneau, Skagway, and Ketchikan, as those are the big three and they're popular for a reason. Juneau gives you access to glaciers and whale watching. Skagway is known for the White Pass Railway and Gold Rush history, and Ketchikan leans more into culture and the rainforest. But the limitation is that a 7-day round trip only has but so much time. And once you factor in sea days and a glacier viewing day, there's only room for a few stops, so most itineraries end up looking very similar. The glacier day is usually something like Glacier Bay, Endicott Arm, or Dawes Glacier, which are all beautiful, but they're not the same as what you get elsewhere. One-way itineraries open up different options because they're not trying to fit everything into a loop. And this is where you start to see places like Hubbard Glacier or College Fjord show up more consistently. Hubbard is one of the largest tidewater glaciers in North America and is known for more frequent calving, which is something a lot of people are hoping to see. And College Fjord gives you multiple glaciers in a single day instead of focusing on just one. You also gain access to ports that round-trip cruises don't include, like Seward or Whittier, which connect directly to Anchorage, which also makes it possible to extend your trip inland to places like Denali, which is something a lot of people don't realize is even an option. So while round-trip cruises give you a consistent set of highlights, one-way itineraries usually expand both the range of destinations and the type of Alaska experience you can build around the cruise. So when it comes down to choosing between these itineraries, you're really balancing three things: cost, convenience, and how much of Alaska you really want to experience. If your priority is keeping things simple and affordable, well, nothing is cheap in Alaska, but Seattle usually makes the most sense. The round-trip cruises tend to have lower total trip costs because you can book cheaper domestic flights and avoid one-way airfares, which are often more limited and expensive. You also don't have to think about as many moving parts, which matters more than people expect, especially if you're traveling with kids or trying to fit this into a tight schedule. On the other hand, if your priority shifts toward the experience itself rather than the cost, Vancouver starts to stand out because you're spending more of your time in Alaska waters and less time just getting there or stopping at an extra port to satisfy an outdated maritime law, and that adds up over the course of the week. You're still getting the same core Alaska ports, but the overall cruise tends to feel more focused on the destination rather than the ship. And then there's one-way itineraries, and this is where you need to be honest about what you want out of the trip. These cruises usually go farther north and include more glacier viewing opportunities and sometimes even multiple glacier days depending on the route. They also give you access to places like Seward or Whittier, which opens the door to adding a land portion, whether that's Denali or other parts of interior Alaska. But you're paying for that both in cost and complexity. Flights are more expensive, logistics are more involved, and you're committing more time to the overall trip. So the way I think about it is this: if you want the easiest and most affordable trip, go Seattle. If you want a better balance between simplicity and a stronger Alaska-focused experience, Vancouver is a great middle ground. And if this is a bucket list trip and you want to get as much out of Alaska as possible, One-way itineraries are hard to beat as long as you're okay with the extra cost and effort it takes to make it happen. So at this point, you've probably already started leaning toward one of these without even realizing it. And that's really the goal here. It's not to tell you which one is best, but to help you see how different these can be so you can pick the one that actually lines up with what you want out of Alaska. But here's the bad news. Even if you pick the right itinerary, you can still completely miss Alaska at its best if you go at the wrong time. But the good news, I made an entire video that breaks down exactly when to cruise Alaska, what you'll see at different times of year, and how it changes the experience. So don't stop here, watch that one next, where I walk you through the best time to go based on what you want to see and do. I'll see you over there. If you're ready, I am. Let's go.